I'm going to throw out a thesis, and it could be completely wrong here. Millennials, not Xers, Ys, Zs, and even younger are looking at the Xers and the boomers and the grind and the sacrifices. Not that sacrifice doesn't happen in every generation. I think they look different. And I wonder, I had a thought about this with related to regret and how they're looking at the generations. I'm an Xer, there's my siblings are young boomers. I think the regrets are more visible for millennials and the younger generations. And they're taking lessons from that, where experience and maybe work-life balance are becoming, it's just a thesis, but it was an observation as I was reading your book. How is there something to reconcile there or glom onto?
I'm a little skeptical, actually, but that's not a skeptic about your particular claim. I just am a skeptic in general about generational explanations for things. There is in this research, there are two different kinds of ways of thinking about generations. One of them is the cohort effect. So people born in 1968 are similar to each other because they're born in 1968. And so that's the cohort effect. And then the other one is what's basically about time of life. So people who are born in 1968 would be 57 years old right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with, and so is it just that all 57-year-olds are always this way, or is there something about being born in 1968? Right. And to me, the weight of evidence shows it's really about the time of life rather than about what cohort you were born into. That we have different perspectives on our lives at different stages in our life. And we see this in the regret research, to something that you had mentioned, that I think one of the biggest points that you had pulled out very quickly in our conversation, which is inaction versus action. People in their 20s, we have data on this, people in their 20s tend to have equal numbers of regrets of action and inaction. But as they aged, what stuck with them were the regrets of inaction. So people in their 30s had more inaction than action. People in their 40s had more inaction regrets than action regrets. People in their 50s, a huge amount more inaction regrets than action regrets. People in their 60s, way more. And so, that was the big effect. So I'm just, forgive the long-winded answer, I'm just generally skeptical about generational explanations for things. That Gen Xers, as I am, Gen Xers are this, and baby boomers are this, and millennials are this, and blah, 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 blah. I think the evidence is pretty thin that there are major differences.
It was just a thought because, my daughter, I shared with you, is, entering the workforce. One of your sons is as well as your other children. And, I think the iteration in the beginning was a little bit of the beanbag culture and having ping pong tables or, pinball machines to satiate a certain generation or style or type. And, how is that reconciled? But,
but also the other thing that's happening is a lot of workplace philosophies. There's an ebb and flow of them. There's sort of like, it flows between loose and tight. So it's like, everybody plays ping pong and sits on a beanbag and has a nap pod, and then it's like, no, you have to be in the office all time and have a punch card. And they're like, no, that's oppressive. And then we go back to something else and they say, no, that's too weak. And, so there's kind of an ebb and flow about.
Yeah, for sure. And then you can get into input versus output, and counting outbound calls versus what do you produce,
that to me, that's an easier one. Yeah, what we should be doing is, I think that we have an obsession with measuring, just in general, we're overweighted on measuring input and underweight on measuring output. Totally. You see this with in education, where basically the central measuring category in education is time. So college is 4 years. It's not how much you learn. It's 4 years.
Right.
High school, it's 4 years, not how much you learn.
Right.
A course is 1 semester, 15 weeks, because we're measuring everything by time rather than by the input of time rather than the output of what people are learning.
In my case, college was 4 years plus. So
good. Whatever. Yeah.
Whatever. And here I am today.